One of my favorite hymns, one that I've requested to be sung at my homegoing services, is Isaac Watts' "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross." Our Riverside choir has a hymn anthem setting for this hymn, and at Brenda Steyer's funeral, our memorial service, they sang that song, "Oh, with spirit and their customary superb musicality." I like that hymn, and I like the hymn anthem version. I've even written a song that picks up, called "Look Upon the Cross," that picks up from that hymn. That's a wonderful hymn. When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my richest gain I count but loss, and pour contempt on all my pride. The cross is a central symbol of the Christian faith. We see in it the heart of the gospel. And what is that gospel? That God was in Christ, reconciling the world to God's own self. Therefore, we adore the cross. We place it atop our sanctuaries or within the sanctuary. Some make signs of the cross as an act of reverence. Some have the cross around the neck, not only just the women, men, even some football players put a cross around, hoping that that'll win some support from high heaven for their efforts. But anyway, the cross is very special for us. But it is not only the cruciform shape of it that we hold dear. Jesus' words uttered from the cross are held in highest regard. In some communities, the Good Friday service is centered around the 7 last words of Jesus from the cross. And over the years, I've been assigned for some of these services that last from 12 to 3, one or the other of the last words to preach. And it's usually a real preaching festival. I've done, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." I've done, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" I preached a sermon on "John, behold thy mother," or "Mother, behold thy son." One of the sermons I preached at St. Paul Community Baptist Church was "I thirst." And in that context, I remember beginning dramatically with a picture of water, pouring it in a glass, holding it up and said, "And Jesus said, I thirst," and took a drink of water. I've also preached and mentioned here last week or so the sermon on "It is finished." But Luke's gospel gives an account of Jesus' last word uttered from the cross. Then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." Having said this, he breathed his last. "Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit." And after that, he breathed his last. Now, that sentence may be the last one from the cross, but it is by no means the least. In fact, I am beginning to understand these words really to be at the heart of what it means to be a Christian. Now, I know that these words are usually lifted up on Good Friday, but the problem is that those words were left on Good Friday, never made it to Saturday, Sunday, and Monday through the next Friday. Otherwise, if the words Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. If they were taken seriously, explain why there are so many Christians across the country, some in the Bible Belt, others in the Rust Belt, and what kind of belt do we have up in here? We ourselves must acknowledge that whatever Jesus said about putting one's spirit into the hands of God, it hasn't worked everywhere. Otherwise, why is there such mean-spirited the sensibilities across the nation? Politicians playing games just to be in control. Businesses that fight against paying a living wage to their workers. A Texas community that boasts about how efficiently they have learned how to put people to death in response to the Oklahoma fiasco. And while I'm talking about the folks over there, sometimes church people, clergy and lay, who have given up on living by the golden rule, or who seem to have forgotten the great commandment, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy minds. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. These signs suggest that even though we moved long past Good Friday and we're almost entering into the season of Pentecost, it won't hurt to just take a little time and you observe my manner. You know, do you get a feeling of how deliberate I am this morning? I mean, actually reading from paper. Uncharacteristic for me, but this is too serious to miss out on. You see, what you got to understand is Jesus was modeling what we ought to be able to say, God, I want to put my life into your hands. And most people think about those words for when they are dying. But basically, those words have to do with the whole range of Christian activities and how we live our lives day by day. And my complaint is that we have heard it and we've preached about it, but it is not clear how many of us really do put our lives, our spirit in God's hands. That reminds me of what Jesus said. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father. And Jesus goes on to say, on that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and cast out demons in your name and do many deeds of power in your name? And Jesus says, then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Go away from me, you evildoers. Now let me confess something. Since working with these texts, which Amy Hayden gave me from the lectionary, I have found myself inching my way closer to understanding how important that sentence is. Father, some of us like to say, Father, Mother God, into thy hands I yield my spirit. I find myself, as I'm working, doing exegesis on these texts which are before us today, I find myself hearing the old deacon in Providence Holy Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, on a Wednesday night prayer meeting, opening up with, I will trust in the Lord, I will trust in the Lord, I will trust in the Lord till I die. I will trust in the Lord, I will trust in the Lord, I will trust in the Lord till I die. Yeah, do I trust in the Lord? Or do I just sing it Do I put my life, my spirit, into the hand of God? Or do I just hum the tune? Well, brothers and sisters, since I'm trying to be very sincere today, I must acknowledge that a more appropriate hymn for me, I don't know about you, but for me, a more appropriate song for me would be Fanny Crosby's song, I Am Thine, O Lord. I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. So, with this rather sobering introduction, I want to invite you to draw nearer with me to the cross. And hear along with me, hear with your heart and your mind that last cry of our Lord. Where did it come from? And how does it challenge our faith today? You heard the text read from Psalm 31. It is a psalm that has lamentation, petition, but especially affirmation of faith. This is what he says, and I read it again. In you, O Lord, I seek refuge. Do not let me ever be put to shame. In your righteousness, deliver me. Incline your ear to me. Rescue me speedily. Be a rock of refuge for me, a strong fortress to save me. You are indeed my rock and my fortress. For your name's sake, lead me and guide me. Take me out of the net that is hidden for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hand I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me. O Lord, faithful God, my times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and persecutors. Let your face shine upon your servant. Save me in your steadfast love. So can you see Jesus on the cross? Blood from the thorn-crowned head and from the side and the hands and the feet, as Watts. See from his hands, his head, his feet. Sorrow and love flow mingled down. Did ever such love and sorrow meet, or love compose so rich a crown? Jesus, up on the cross, and the final words he says, maybe we only hear the final words he said. Jesus on the cross, reminding God, you have been my refuge. You have been my rock. But he is in a net, and he says, take me out of the net that is hidden for me, for you are my refuge. And then he says, into your hand I commit my spirit. Oh, thank you, choir. You didn't know you were preaching before I got to preaching this morning. Don't you know that in John Weaver, the wonderful organist, Presbyterian church over there, he put this thing together, but he's saying, do you realize the words you sang today are songs that were in the mouth of Christ the day he was crucified? The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our stronghold. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be moved, and though the mountains be tumbled into the depths of the sea, though its waters rage and foam, and though the mountains tremble at its tumult. God is in the midst of us, and God will help us, and that right early. I get myself worked up when I begin to think he knew that psalm. He knew it so well that even as his bodily energy is ebbing away, somehow I suspect he at first said, as he had prayed earlier, let this cup pass from me. And now he says, get me out of this net. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. These words on the mouth of Jesus, in the face of crucifixion, in the advancing, clammy hands of death, Jesus, from Psalm 31, finally says, as if this is the climax, as if this is the summary of my life, as if these words reveal what my whole ministry was about. For my ministry, actually, if you ask the disciples, they will tell you it was a curriculum of trust. That's what he had taught. You must trust God in the good times and in the bad times. You must be able to say, Lord, things are not going well with me. My adversaries are against me, and I myself, I'm failing to be all I want to be or ought to be, but I trust you. In fact, I have come to understand that by myself I can't make it. But with your presence, if I give myself into your keeping, if I understand that your providential care is the greatest hope that I can have in my life and even in my death, if I could only live out, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. That was Jesus speaking on the cross, but Jesus had been speaking like this all along. You see, those words were not just quoted. They were the way he lived his life. And thank you, Chair of the Council, for mentioning Jim Washington. Jim Washington used to meet at the back door right at McGifford Hall. My back door was adjoining his back door. And sometimes late at night, we would be lamenting the conditions that troubled us. And yet Jim says, really, but let me tell you, I know these things are happening, but when I get through talking to you, I'm going home and go to bed, he says, because I've learned how to sleep on a stormy night. That's what he liked to talk about. Can you sleep on a stormy night? When the thunder is rolling and the lightning is flashing and everything seems to be going down the drain. When your sickness threatens death. When your misfortune threatens the business going belly up. When your family act like they need a whole bevy of psychiatrists to straighten stuff out. Can you sleep anyhow? Father, into thy hands I commit. Let the winds blow. Let the waves roll. Nevertheless, because I have submitted myself into your hands, I've got a feeling everything is going to be all right. Jesus had taught his disciples. He had promised, just put your trust in God. He told the people of the Beatitudes, blessed are they that do hunger and thirst after righteousness, they shall be filled. Blessed are you when men revile you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake, for so did they do it to the prophets as well. But if you let your light shine so that it will give glory into the house, you can recognize that God may not come when you want him, but he'll be right on time. He talked about an anxiety-free society. Don't go around troubling yourself because of your circumstances. And I know something about this myself. You know I'm retired. You all know I'm retired, right? And when you retire, you really usually get on what they call fixed income. You understand that? Fixed too low. You understand what I'm trying to say? But you can't afford to let your economic circumstances define your spirit. You got to be able, even in hard times, to say, Lord, I'm waiting. The checks are running out. The government doesn't seem to want to respond to the extraordinary disaster from that recession we've been through. But I'm going to trust you anyway. I used to say, thank God it's not been too easy, but I haven't had to eat dog food yet. But some of you need to know that even in these hard times, you are called upon to recite the words of Jesus, not just when you die, but it does help when you see the end approaching, to have lived a life of yieldedness, to be able to find in your mouth some words. It matters. People, one of the benefits of faith is that it teaches you how to die. That's a benefit. You know, some people don't know how to die. They cannot receive the richness that comes even in the crossing moment because they're so panicky about the circumstances. But let me tell you, I think it helps when you know that you cannot defend yourself against the ravages of time, to be able to say, well, anyhow, I have put myself in the hands of God, and God is going to be faithful. Not just with respect to my remains, but to my spirit, my life, who I am, that in God's hand, all that I am shall be preserved in the divine love from which it came. People, if you don't have any other reason why you ought to join the church and make your commitment of faith, it's so you can know how to die. Guess what? None of us are going to get out of life alive. All of us are going to face it. But wouldn't it be wonderful, even in the moment of death, to be able to have on our lips, Father, the time is near, but into thy hands I commit my life. And thank God that's what happened for Stephen. Stephen, bless his heart, stood up courageously. He must have had to trust in God to preach what he preached. He told the truth just like it was, and they did not like it and decided that they were going to kill him. And as they began to buzz their displeasure at his conversation, he looked up and said, I see God and the Son standing at his right side. One preacher I like, Reverend Blue over at Ephesus Seventh-day Adventist Church, said Stephen got a standing ovation. That is, Jesus was standing looking over. There's a man who has committed himself to God, and nothing they can do, let them stone him. God has provisions for his continued existence in only the form that God knows and understands. Oh, we may write pictures and we may talk about it, but only God knows. But God will keep that which we have committed against that day. Finally, I think the fascinating thing about Jesus is that Jesus wanted us to know how faithful God was. Jesus called us to commit our lives to God. But in calling us, Jesus gave evidence of respect for our choice. I like that. Jesus is not trying to force anybody to put themselves into the hands of God, but invite. But Jesus knew that every human being has the capacity to decide where they're going to put their trust. We all have it. St. Augustine says, give what thou commandest, command what thou wilt. We have the ability. How are you going to live? Where are you going to put your trust? Where is your trust? Is your trust in your family name? Is your trust in your race? Is your trust in your money? Is your trust in your reputation? Is your trust in your connections? Let me tell you, all those things will come to an end. And so you might as well figure, everybody needs some of all of this stuff. But at the end, they won't help you. You need to be able to know that God will be with you beyond the loss of the money, the loss of the life, the loss of the reputation, the loss of the family, whatever else you lose. At least you've got this thing that God's presence will sustain. I think I want to close my sermon because we have a meeting to go to soon. But I want to close it with a word of thanks to the Riverside Church. Riverside, you are a grand and glorious congregation. Our building is a marvel. There are still places after all these years that I don't even know where they go to. You have provided an opportunity for some of the richest, wonderful moments in my life. Can you think of any service that's going to be any higher than the service when Nelson Mandela first came down these aisles and we were dancing the toi-toi? Some of the most wonderful going home celebrations in this place, some of the most vigorous social justice action come from this place. Some of the most loving people here at this church send cards and call and show care in times of special need. It's a wonderful church. And for all its wonderfulness, let me also say it's a difficult place. I mean, you try to pull all this diversity together, you're going to have some trouble anyhow. I mean, folks that do, I understand why folks like homogeneous situations, but when you got all of us in here, black and white and Latino and Asians of various sorts, and the idea, Pacific Islanders and Polynesians, and you got gay, and you got straight, and you got rich, and you got poor, and you got educated, and you got uneducated, and now you put them all in a bowl, and you think you're going to have peace all the time. Y'all, something must be wrong with your head. No, we pay a price. We pay a great price for the goal of being God's beloved community beyond these categories. For all of these wonderful things, I want to thank you. But of course, there's one thing I got to say finally. Brother Chairman, the greatest gift Riverside Church has given to me has been the opportunity while here to experience the hand of God to which Jesus prayed. He said, Father, into thy hand I commend my spirit. And I have had the opportunity at Riverside Church to go into that little space up on the 10th floor. And I've told this so many times, but I want to say this is a renewal of that story, because in my effort to provide leadership, sometimes things were more difficult, and I perhaps did not even have all of the competencies I wanted or needed or the grace I needed. And so frequently, I would go up to that room, and you all know about that recliner that is in that office, and I would go and sit in the recliner and say, Lord, I'm struggling with some things I don't quite know how to handle. I need your help. You need to show me what to do. And I'd fall asleep. And an hour later, I'd wake up apologizing. And God says, don't worry. While you were asleep, I took care of the situation you came to talk to me about. Oh, my goodness. So many times, so much so, onto that recliner, I began to call it the hand of God. Oh, I wish it would happen for you. I wish you would find some place where you could go and say, Lord, these circumstances are such, I submit myself to you, and dare to trust that God will bring you through. And what I really want to thank you for is I left this church. I didn't want to bring the computer with me. I didn't want any of all of that. I just wish I could take that hand with me. But guess what?
I found out that the hand is not located only up there, that wherever you are, if you lift up your heart in faith and trust, God will be a hand. And I want to thank you. Thank you for these few months I've had to come back over as transitional minister, because I was wondering, is the grace of God still there? Is the hand there? And since I've been here, I've found that the hand of God is still there, and that when I sit in that hand, I have a feeling everything's going to be all right. I hope it happens for you. Let me know if you find it. Amen.